Hello viewers, this is Seo bringing you the news of the morning. Currently, the Middle East is in a state of emergency after Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, declared a complete blockade of Gaza. He declared that there would be no ceasefire until Gaza is completely occupied, putting the whole world on edge. The Middle East conflict is now a reality. Let's examine the current regional situation more closely. On May 4th, 2025, Israel made a shocking decision to withdraw troops, seen as a prelude to a larger operation. The Gideon's Chariot operation aims to fully occupy Gaza and use it as an Israeli stronghold. After Netanyahu, Israeli officials publicly declared that the Israeli military would not withdraw through Egypt and even formalized this position. Israel initially occupied about 30% of the Gaza Strip, but now plans to take control of the entire region. Israel's plan to completely occupy the Gaza Strip is essentially a return to the previous situation, where Israel maintained full control over the territory. So far, Israel has attacked Hamas strongholds and then withdrawn its troops. But now, the plan is to continue occupying the captured areas and completely block Hamas from re-establishing itself. Tens of thousands of reserve troops are being mobilized, and civilians are being forcibly relocated during the process. According to Israeli Defense Minister Defrin's explanation, the ultimate goal of the complete occupation of Gaza is not to defeat Hamas, but to drive out the residents. We must closely monitor the ongoing situation between Hamas and the Israeli military. Ashadashi and Hamas previously engaged in ceasefire talks with Israel, mediated by Qatar and Egypt. Here, Hamas said that instead of a 5 to 7 day ceasefire, they would release all Israeli hostages remaining in Gaza at once. Israel rejected Hamas's ceasefire proposal, fearing that Hamas could use the 5-7 year period to rearm and attack Israel again. Israel demanded Hamas's complete disarmament, but due to their vastly differing positions, the ceasefire negotiations ultimately failed. In this case, Israel announced plans to fully occupy Gaza and started executing them. Let's take another look at what Defrin said. Defrin said that the ultimate goal is to eliminate the leadership. When the ground offensive is carried out, it seems likely that the operation will be carried out in a way that focuses on rescuing the hostages. Many are also concerned about the Israeli military's ground offensive. First of all, this is the Middle East war for the first time. Through the Middle East war, Israel and the Middle East came to know each other's power. The lesson is that you cannot completely overwhelm your opponent through military force alone. Decisive victories in the Middle East are unattainable. The primary goal of wars in the region is to keep the opposing side in check. But unless you kill everyone on the other side, you can never completely destroy them. That's what we've learned. This is the Gaza Strip, and about 2 million people live in the Gaza Strip. But unless you kill all of those 2 million people, it's actually impossible to completely occupy the Gaza Strip. Even if you control the Gaza Strip, continued conflict will make it challenging to ensure Israel's national security and lead to more bloodshed. Even after occupying the Gaza Strip, many question if Israel can realistically achieve its goals. And secondly, it's about the relationship with the United States. After declaring the complete occupation of the Gaza Strip, the next thing that comes is the burden of dealing with the aftermath. If you watched yesterday's video, you likely saw that after Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander, was killed, there was a retaliatory attack on a United States base in Iraq. Israel adamantly blamed Iran for the incident and vowed to retaliate against both the Houthi rebels and Iran. If this continues, the Israel-United States alliance that President Trump is pushing for could be completely shaken. Recent analysis suggests the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu has become strained. According to Israeli media reports, recently, Prime Minister Netanyahu has also expressed various complaints about President Trump's Middle East policy in private meetings. Israel objects to the United States mediating with Iran, but President Trump is linking this to his primary foreign policy initiative, making those objections difficult to resolve. They are pursuing diplomacy to mend ties. However, it appears Israel is also attempting to repair its relationship with Iran, given the current circumstances. If things continue like this, the relationship between Israel and the United States is bound to become strained. The stalled Iran nuclear talks have heightened tensions. An Israeli attack on Iran would further complicate efforts to resume negotiations. More importantly, President Trump is scheduled to visit the Middle East from May 13th to 16th. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates are set to be visited. So, many media outlets are reporting that Israel's attack on Gaza is likely to be delayed until after President Trump's Middle East trip is over. First of all, Israel said it would respect the position of the United States and that the Middle East Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, would hold a meeting with the heads of the countries concerned based on the new security plan proposed by the Middle East Special Envoy. They said without an agreement, the offensive will intensify. This is unfavorable for President Trump. If Israel cannot control this, it could lose its diplomatic initiative and alliance, and it should focus on China, but it is currently distracted on multiple fronts, so Israel is in a difficult position to act right now. North Korea attacked international airspace, causing civilian casualties. Israel conducted a retaliatory airstrike on a distant base and promptly resumed its mission. Ben Gurion International Airport was attacked, but Israel swiftly restarted operations after a brief pause. The airstrike, involving about 20 fighter jets, targeted the Houthis' base. Reports indicate around 50 bombs were dropped in the attack. According to current reports, at least one person died and 35 others were injured in the attack. Israel announced that the Houthis used the Hodeidah port to attack civilian airports and infrastructure in nearby areas. Israel said that the Houthis used the port of Hodeidah to operate drones and attack various facilities, and that they struck a cement factory in the nearby Bazil area that produced cement used in the construction of such facilities. The attack completely destroyed one of the main Houthi facilities in Hodeidah, with reports indicating about 70% of the facility was destroyed. As a result, port operations have been suspended. Houthi forces are expected to continue targeting Hodeidah port with missile and drone attacks until it is fully restored. The port is crucial for importing supplies into Yemen. 80% of Yemen's food imports pass through this port. With the port paralyzed, significant damage is expected. Meanwhile, Israel continues its offensive against Gaza. Currently, Israel's ground operations in Gaza are concentrated in 3 main areas. So, Gaza is literally on the brink of collapse. Because of the food shortages, people are dying of hunger. For the past 3 months, Israel has blockaded the Gaza Strip, severely restricting the entry of humanitarian aid, goods, and commercial supplies. This is the longest blockade Israel has ever imposed in its history, and Israel claims that it is enforcing such a strict blockade to prevent Hamas from receiving any supplies. However, the international community has not viewed this favorably. International organizations have stated that Israel's actions in Gaza violate international law, and some have accused Israel of using starvation as a weapon of war. The World Food Program stated that the amount of food delivered to Gaza in June was only enough to feed just 200,000 people for 2 days. Currently, about 3,000 trucks carrying humanitarian aid are waiting to enter Gaza. However, for these trucks to enter, Israel's blockade needs to be lifted, but Israel is not allowing it. The United States and Israel refuse to open the border and are exploring options to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza. An announcement is expected soon, but it's uncertain if the severe issues in Gaza will be addressed. South Korea will likely be impacted by this situation as well. If war reignites in the Middle East, a steep oil price hike will be hard to avoid, inevitably impacting South Korea. Crude oil imports from the Middle East increased from 59.8% in 2021 to 71.9% in 2023. It has now risen to 73.6%. This means that our dependence on Middle Eastern crude oil has increased compared to the past. If the Middle East becomes unstable, oil prices could soar, negatively impacting Korea's economy. That's why Israel is trying to launch an attack in response to this threat. If tensions rise in the Hormuz Strait, it could impact the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait, key allies and major oil suppliers to Korea. Korea must prepare for this potential scenario. Especially in this situation, there is a high possibility that the supply of crude oil could be severely disrupted. The military operation has already begun, and the oil supply chain is being affected in real time. Consequently, manufacturing and export-import industries worldwide, including Korea, are struggling. Prices of energy, raw materials, and goods could become unstable. The international community is imposing sanctions to prevent escalation, but a clear solution remains elusive. As the situation becomes more chaotic, we must calmly assess it and carefully consider our response. The world is closely monitoring the escalating Middle East conflict. How do you feel about the current situation in the region? Please let us know in the comments. I will try to read as many as possible. Thank you.